Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a good day. Thanks for joining us. Some news out of Berea. Surprised some coaching moves and shakeups on Kevin Stefanski's staff. Josina Anderson breaking the story earlier today. Browns fire offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt, running backs coach Stump Mitchell, tight ends coach T.C. McCarthy. From what she is hearing, some of the players not happy with the moves. As you might guess, fans have various opinions. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Oh, hi, Dave. This is Danielle. I'm calling. I'm really frustrated and upset with this decision to fire Coach Stump. I love Coach Stump. Who are we going to get this better than Coach Stump? I don't really know where the Browns think they're going with all this firing, like Van Pelt and Stump. I am just very confused and wonder what you guys think about all this. All right, I still love my Brownies. Go Browns.
With that, let's welcome in Jeff Risdon, managing editor for draftwire.com. And Jeff, my reaction to this, I'm not completely surprised. I think if you think about it, Deshaun Watson was 4-1. The offense didn't grow as quickly and as much as you had hoped it would. I think this is all about finding a way to maximize the talents of your $230 million quarterback.
Yeah, and that's what they need to do. And these guys were all there before Deshaun, and I think that's important to note. Now, obviously, Stefanski was too, but one of the things that I noticed was with Van Pelt, who really grew in the offense. I mean, I know Amari Cooper, got better throughout the time, but he wasn't necessarily a guy that developed a lot of talent. And I think that was one of the things where he worked well with the established team and guys like OBJ and Jarvis Landry and people like that. And they're not here anymore. I think that maybe for whatever reason, his message just wasn't reaching as well to the way that the team is constituted now. So I'm not necessarily surprised that it happened. I think the abruptness of it, because there wasn't any real signs coming out of Berea that this was going to happen like now, even with the loss over the weekend that unfortunately ended the season. But yeah, I think that's more of the shock of it. I'm not surprised at all actually that Stump Mitchell got fired, because again, you didn't see guys that was Kareem Hunt. He kind of is who he is, but the young guys, did they get better under him? I don't know. I don't think he was a bad coach, but I just don't think that that he was probably what they wanted anymore.
Yeah, and you look at it, I would say the same thing for Van Pelt. They needed you need a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ideas, because you need to remake this offense around the guy that you're counting on. Already some names that are surfacing for replacing these guys. Josina Anderson, again, breaking this a little bit ago. Former Panthers assistant head coach Deuce Staley was let go with Frank Reich when they kind of cleaned the offensive system out in Carolina earlier this season, is in town visiting the Browns, who now have a running back opening again. Jeff, you're familiar with Deuce Staley. You, in addition to covering the Browns and the Texans, have covered the Lions as well.
Yeah, Deuce is he's a no-nonsense guy, and if you like that about Stump, because Stump was a very blunt guy, former NFL running back. Deuce is the same way. He got along fantastic with Jamal Williams. The DeAndre Swift story in Detroit was a little bit of a different one. It didn't go so well. He's a guy that if he clicks with Kevin Stefanski, I think it's a very good fit. He wasn't necessarily the best fit in Carolina. Not that Carolina had a lot of talent to go with anyways, and they sort of knew they were dead men walking early on. But he can be an effective running backs coach. I wouldn't want him as my offensive coordinator. I don't think he has the breadth of vision for that. But he would certainly make a good qualified replacement as a running backs coach.
All right, so I would assume you're in agreement that they have to find a way to maximize Deshaun Watson. This offense has to look better than it did with Deshaun Watson. It's kind of amazing. Watson had the most snaps of any of the quarterbacks. He had more than Joe Flacco, but he's had 770 snaps exactly the last 2 years with Kevin Stefanski. When you think about remaking this offense, and who are some guys that you think would make sense as an offensive coordinator?
You know, the number one name that popped into my head was Tim Kelly, who worked with Deshaun in Houston. He was the quarterback's coach and then the offensive coordinator in Deshaun's last season. I can't keep track of all the dates on these things. They worked together for at least 3 years in Houston. And Kelly is a guy who understands how to build a team around what Deshaun does. They had a lot of RPOs in their system, the run pass option. They did a lot of things where Deshaun could, do a quick play fake and a sight check and opt into things. So they understand the verbiage, and I think Deshaun respects what Tim Kelly does, and vice versa. Now Kelly, he has been with the Titans, I believe, the last couple of years, and so he's gone. So he is, they cleaned house. He makes total sense, and I know he and Deshaun get along. And I know from covering the Texans a little bit, and also from the time with the Browns, I think he's a good personality fit for Kevin Stefanski. I think he's a guy that can bounce. They can bounce ideas off one another, and Kelly is strong enough on his own to say, maybe we need to go in a little bit of a different, style of approach here. And I think Kevin, with the Jim Schwartz experience that we saw last year, is open to having coaches, counsel him. And I think Tim Kelly, while he's not necessarily a bombastic personality or all that well known, I think he would fit that pretty well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I believe they got to get some different ideas and some guys that can go back and forth with Kevin. Kevin Stefanski is a really good offensive coach. He just needs to figure out how to maximize Deshaun Watson. All right, this is another name that's kind of out there, some other ideas for offensive coordinators. Jared Lubengill tweeting this out. Darrell Bevell, a name keep a close eye for, Browns offensive coordinator, was with Stefanski in Minnesota, had success in Seattle, was with the Dolphins the last 2 years, getting schooled on their high-powered offense, QB coach, passing game coordinator. When I look at that, Jeff, I don't necessarily think you want to connect the dots to Kevin Stefanski. And I may be completely wrong. I think Kevin Stefanski is looking for a different set of eyes and a different set of ideas to kind of marry with what he's doing.
I agree with you on that. And again, I think that reflects to the Jim Schwartz experience where Stefanski stepped outside of his comfort zone and experience zone and got a guy that came in and did a fantastic job. I know it didn't end all that well. I think we all have to agree that Jim Schwartz was a good hire, and his outsider influence, I think, is something that Stefanski appreciates. So Bevell is another guy that I've dealt with in Detroit. He would be very good for the downfield passing game, and I do think he's a guy, if you're looking to maximize what David Njoku and Amari Cooper can do, I think he'd do a very good job at that. I actually think he would be better if you were working with Joe Flacco as your quarterback, though, and that's obviously not where the team's going. All
right, here's another kind of thing to keep an eye on relative to the Browns offense and what they've done. This is Snap Motion report from 2023. So this is from Seth Walder. These are the teams that had the highest snap motion relative to their snap count. So Dolphins, better than 2/3. Rams, 45%. Niners, Packers, Lions, Ravens are the top 6. 5 of those are still in the playoffs, and the Rams had an explosive offense throwing the ball. You look down, the Browns and the Eagles are 2 of the worst. So, the whole idea of, what gave the Browns defense trouble? It was motion. It was pre-snap motion. Browns do the least amount of it. The teams that are being relatively successful and high-powered relative to the modern NFL are doing the most of it. So I think that's another thing that factors into this.
Yeah, and I do think that there's a definite benefit for Deshaun in allowing him to read the defense. To go to the Rams for a quick second, When Matthew Stafford was in Detroit, he hated having pre-snap motion, and he adapted to having it in Los Angeles, and has adapted very well. They won a Super Bowl with it. I think showing Deshaun what it's going to be, but also it's a tip for the linemen. Like, they understand, like, okay, maybe it lets them see where the blitz pressure might be coming from. It helps the running backs, like, oh, okay, maybe I need to slide over here for my pass protection. Those little things get revealed by motion. And I don't think that the Browns did a very good job of helping their guys in that. Like, one of the things that stood out for me in watching the Browns this year was I don't think the running backs did a very good job in pass protection. They had their moments, but by and large, they need to get better at it. And I think that's something that pre-snap motion can help, aside from the fact that it allows you to dictate maybe matchups more than what the Browns have done with their offense under AVP. I think that might be one of the reasons why he's gone, quite frankly.
Jeff Risdon from DraftWire.com and I are going to step aside. Before we go to break, take a look at this. Browns, some more roster moves relative to the reserve futures contracts they signed. Linebacker Caleb Johnson. So, in essence, he's a guy they're hanging on to on the practice squad. So a linebacker, a young linebacker with some NFL experience. Caleb Johnson signed to the reserve futures contract for the Browns. Jeff Risdon and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon, managing editor of DraftWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. You know, some fans are trying to bash Stefanski because he hasn't won the division in 4 seasons since he's been here. I only went back 10 years, so forgive me. But the winner of the AFC North has had an average of 12.9 wins. I mean, we could round that up to 13 wins. That's how many wins you have to have on average to win the AFC North division. Just this season alone, the Browns could have won about 4 other divisions in the league. I do agree that Stefanski does need to finally win the North division, but it is much more difficult, which is a good thing because that makes this team and organization strive to be better. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, I mean, the AFC North, all over 500. It's the first time since 1935, I believe it was. And I couldn't tell you the divisions back in 35. So
I think there were 2 of them.
the interesting thing is it's going to be tough to win the North again. You just look at the quarterbacks in that division. And I'm guessing Pittsburgh's going to they're going to get somebody that elevates the quarterback position there as well.
They need something, but yeah, look at the coaches in the division. You're going against some really exceptional coaches. Mike Tomlin, like that team on paper, they were a 6-win team this year. He got them to it. Like there's some great coaching in this division, and I think Stefanski is part of that. The way that he held this team together this year, that's remarkable to me. They had every excuse that they needed to not do what they did. And they went out there and they got things accomplished. Getting 13 wins, as the caller mentioned, that's a great call. That's not easy to do when you're playing 4 quarterbacks and you're playing backup linemen everywhere. I think Kevin Stefanski had a fantastic year coaching, and getting to the postseason is the goal. Would winning the division be great? Yes, it would. But there's no shame in coming in second to Baltimore. Cincinnati, even in their down year this year, was a pretty darn good football team. They need to maybe rack up a few more wins outside the division, but some of that's under Stefanski's control, and again, some of it's just the cavalcade of injuries this year that made it so tough. I think, and so we actually, as a Pro Football Creator of America, the PFWA, we had to vote today on our Coach of the Year and then all the other awards. I know Kevin Stefanski's got a few votes, probably more than a few.
All right, this is interesting. This is from ESPN.com. This ranking all 32 teams' rookie classes this year. So it does not weight it relative to first round pick, second round pick, third round pick, fourth round pick. So the Texans have the number 1 overall rookie class, obviously. Rams were 2, Packers were 3. Browns check in at 22, and it says Browns didn't even pick until the 3rd round, so a ranking this low suggests more value than would have been expected from their rookie class. It does help that undrafted rookie free agent safety Ronnie Hickman started 4 games, tailing a pick, 25 tackles. Jeff, they did a nice job. They're going to have to do it again, too. That's what happens. You better hit on some of those when you trade away your first-round picks and your second-round picks.
Absolutely, and I thought Dawan Jones played a fantastic year. He did a lot better than I expected him to do. I thought he was going to be too big, and he proved me wrong, and Bill Callahan deserves some credit for that, too. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more out of Cedric Tillman and Ika, but this was a playoff team. They won a lot of games. In adverse situation, would have been nice to get a little bit more out of some guys. Yeah, but when you don't have those picks, like you said, you've got to hit. I think they did a pretty good job. You're going to see more growth, hopefully, from those middle round guys because they do need to get a little bit more out of them. But Dawan Jones, my goodness, that's. I'm keeping on the PFF with. He was my all-rookie tackle, and I don't think anybody expected to rate that name in there as the best rookie offensive tackle, and they got it out of the 4th round. So, again, being 22nd in total, I'll take that from where they picked.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's middle of the pack, and when you don't pick until the 3rd round, that's good work. All right, this is from Dogs by Nature. 3 best personnel moves from 2023 for the Browns. They say re-signing Ethan Posick, the center. Signing Dalvin Tomlinson in free agency, and then something we just talked about, drafting Dawan Jones in the 2023 NFL Draft. And Jeff, as the managing editor of DraftWire, you know some of the crazy stuff that comes out. There's just too much, and I get it. You're spending tens of millions up to hundreds of millions of dollars on these guys. But C.J. Stroud, he doesn't process this. He looks pretty good. The same thing with Dawan Jones. But the moves with Tomlinson and Posick were really, really good. Fit huge needs.
They did, and I'm glad that Posick got mentioned there because my initial inclination when I saw what they wrote was, where's Zadarius Smith? Because I think that was a brilliant move as well. And it's tough to leave him off, but Posick was glue, man. We've been spoiled in Cleveland having Alex Mack for all those years. And then you get J.C. Treader. And now Ethan Posick coming in. And I don't think he's to their level, but he's close enough that it works. That's an astute move by them because he would not have been on my list, but now that they brought it up, can't argue with that. And again, Dawan Jones was one. I didn't have a problem with the Browns drafting him where they did. I didn't think he would be as good as he is right now. So kudos to them for citing that. But Zadarius Smith is really good. He's better than Jadeveon Clowney ever was across from Miles, and I think that deserves a special mention.
All right, so here's some more news. Austin Watkins, guy that had a huge preseason. We're hearing that there is a bunch of reserve future deals that have been offered to him by other teams, including one by the Browns. Browns really want him to remain here. Watkins is kind of waiting to evaluate everything, making a final determination based on the best fit as well as some financial guarantees. The one thing is they got to upgrade the wide receiver room. They, by any means necessary, they need more out of their wide receivers.
Yeah, and again, so hopefully some of that comes from Cedric Tillman stepping up. But this is a chance where this is a guy who's looking and saying, we've got a new offensive coordinator coming in here. Is this a guy that I want to play for? Or, I have some opportunity to do what I want to do. Can I go somewhere else and maybe get a better opportunity? And maybe this new guy just isn't for me. Smart for him to keep his options open. He's a talented guy. I would like to see more chances given to him to make an impact because I do think that, again, you got to shake that bottom of that wide receiver room up. It's just not up to snuff. Amari's fantastic. You got to get more out of the guys around him than that.
Jeff Risdon, managing editor from DraftWire.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon, managing editor from DraftWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Jay. This is Danielle. I was just thinking about Bill Belichick. We might as well just bring Bill back to the Browns, and that will be a load of fun. So what do you guys think about that? Let's bring back Bill Belichick. All right, go Brownies. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, there's no, there is no way that will happen. But Bill Belichick will end up coaching somewhere and probably having significantly more success than he did in New England.
Yeah, it did not end well in New England. It didn't end well in Cleveland, we might remember way back in the day. You know, he is going to get a job somewhere. I just hope that his interview in Atlanta, where he went in and he did interview for their head coaching position, was 28-3. What happened? I think that's probably his coup d'etat there.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with Bill Belichick. I also don't think he's if you're thinking about him as an offensive coordinator or assistant coach, I don't think he's going to do that.
No, I think they were talking about head coach, and he's not going to do that either. You know, he's going to go somewhere where he has a quarterback. He can coach defense. That defense was still pretty good, and it was consistent. He needs some personnel and probably not involved as heavily in the personnel decisions.
That would be a smart move. Yeah. He cooked his own goose a little bit there.
Yep. All right. Mike Florio, Chris Sims, where they see the Browns heading into 2024.
More pressure on Deshaun Watson next year. More pressure on him. More pressure on the team. Look at what they did without Deshaun Watson.
I'm sure he's happy they lost.
This is year 3 coming up.
Right.
On the 5-year fully guaranteed contract. And if he can't stay healthy, if they don't win, I don't know what happens in 2025. They're going to be as much of a wild card in 24 as they were in 23. Going into the season, we're just not going to know what to expect. Yeah. Jim Schwartz will be back. Name hasn't come up yet for head coaching interviews.
Not going to after that.
It's not going to after that. And they'll reload, and they'll have Deshaun Watson, and they'll have Nick Chubb, presumably, if they want to pay him. Contract goes up next year. But they're going to have some decisions to make. But one of the big ones hovering is, what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson? Are we ever going to get a return on this investment?
Exactly, right. Is Deshaun Watson ever going to return to what he was, right? I mean, again, it's another year where you go, he didn't play very much football. It's been a long time since he's really gotten a groove of a football season. That worries me. They got a lot of pieces there in Cleveland. We know that. They had some devastating injuries this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball that certainly hurt them. You know, I think they're here to stay and going to be a player. But, yeah, you're right. The Watson thing's going to be real. Jim Schwartz has got to go back, too, and reevaluate himself a little. The fact that they come out in the second half and the Texans were throwing the ball on them like that in the first half, and there's no adjustment made, and they just go, we're going to continue to do what we got torched with in the first half and just keep doing that, that's not always a great thing either.
And, Jeff, that's a fair assessment of defensively. I think they told you with the personnel moves, and they alluded to, you know, the rumors of personnel moves, the offensive coaching staff. They told you they're going to reinvent this to make it work, or to give Deshaun Watson every opportunity to find his skill set within this offense.
Yeah, I think what we saw today with the coaching moves that they've made and the coaching hires that they will make, that's them doing basically what Mike Florio wants them to do and try to maximize your return, whatever you can get from the deal for Deshaun, the contract for Deshaun, because he's not going anywhere. He can't go anywhere. They can't afford to have him go anywhere. They need him to be the best Deshaun Watson he can be. The Browns determined that Alex Van Pelt was not the right guy to make that happen. I probably agree with them the more that I think about it. Nothing against AVP. I just don't think that it would. I think the fresh set of eyes is going to do a really good job, and the pressure is on Deshaun and the offensive coordinator. And I kind of hope that Deshaun he deserves a little bit of input on who the offensive coordinator can be. If he wants Tim Kelly, go get him. If he doesn't want that you might have to, because this is a guy that he worked with closely in the past, maybe they're not simpatico. You probably need to get Deshaun's at least opinion and thoughts on what the new offensive coordinator might need. I think that would be a good way to help what Chris and Mike were talking about there.
Yeah, again, 770 snaps in 2 seasons. That's what they have gotten out of him. That's not even a normal season of football. So this one from the Bleacher Report. Get your thoughts on this. One key offseason addition for each eliminated team in the wild card round. So Browns receiver, draft option, Devontae Walker, wide receiver from North Carolina, 17 yards per catch this year. Only year with the Tar Heels. Did have a huge season last year with Kent State locally. But Drake May, reliable speed threat who could get behind the defense, 6'2", 200 frame. Compared him to former Steelers burner Mike Wallace. Free agent option, they say Marquise Brown. Both Ravens and Cardinals tried to make him a number 1 receiver. Not who he is. Still capable being a high-end secondary option. I know you've done a lot of draft work already. What do you think of Walker?
It's a good year to need a wide receiver in general, and Tez Walker's a good one. A lot of people in Northeast Ohio know him from his days at Kent State. He had a weird year at North Carolina where he wasn't initially eligible. I think he played 4 games, 5 games maybe, and got hurt. He's a guy that the arrow is going to be pointing up on as you go through the draft process, and he's right in that range. There's some other guys. I think a guy like, if you watch the national championship game, Jalen McMillan out of Washington is a guy that fits into that mold. Again, it's a great year to need a wide receiver in the draft, and wouldn't surprise me at all if the Browns took a couple of them. There's some late round dudes that will be able to help too. I don't want to pigeonhole him in. Derek Clausen, by the way, is a very good evaluator of talent, so I certainly respect his opinion. I'm not a Marquise Brown guy. I like guys who have a better catch radius than what he does. And I think Deshaun Watson likes guys that have a bigger catch radius than he does. He's so small. He's very fast. He's very good with the ball in his hands, but getting him the ball, it's a challenge. So I would pass. I would want somebody that's a little bit more substantial of size and maybe a little bit more longer track record of producing with different styles of quarterback. Because I tell you what, Lamar Jackson got better once he left, and I don't think that's a coincidence. That's nothing against Marquise. That's just that's the kind of receiver that he is.
Yeah, and again, when you think of the guys that Deshaun Watson had some success with, DeAndre Hopkins kind of jumps out at you. It's a guy that can go get it a little bit. Are there any other wide receivers?
He should be available, by the way.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins coming to Cleveland would be a lot of fun. He happens to be my son is still a Texans fan from when we lived in Houston. He's got a jersey, and Deshaun helped a lot of that. Why that's so good.
Who are some of the other wide receivers you think might be available in the second round when they're picking who would fit with Deshaun Watson well?
A guy like Troy Franklin out of Oregon, I don't know if he's going to last that long. There's a whole glut of guys there. He's a very good one. There's Johnny Walker from Florida State, huge guy, 6'7", he almost looks like a tight end. Has 84-inch wingspan. Not the swiftest of guys, nor would you expect that, but he's a guy that can make catches. Adonai Mitchell from Texas, AD. Again, I don't think that he's going to be there, but if he's there, he's a guy that really fits as a bigger wide receiver who can move down the field, catch balls in traffic, but also work back to the receiver work back to the quarterback when the quarterback extends a play. That's something that Sean did very well in Houston, and that's one of the reasons why DeAndre Hopkins was so good with him. Finding a guy who understands how to do that is a good trade. A guy, Torrey Horton, out of Colorado State would have been perfect, but he went back to school, so he's out.
All right, before I let you go, we do know that Tampa Bay Buccaneers are headed to Detroit to play the Lions. Take a listen to the question that was asked of Todd Bowles, who's getting his team ready in Tampa to travel to Detroit to play.
I'm looking forward towards Detroit. The weather has been a factor in some of the playoff games, even for the most prepared teams. Today it's 13 in Detroit, which doesn't compare to some of the temperatures we tend to talk to. Any special plans to acclimate the team to not only endure but perform in those kind of frigid temperatures should you face them in Detroit?
You do know we play indoors, right? And they got a dome. No, nothing planned. We're indoors, and we only have to be outside for 20 seconds getting off the bus, going under the thing, so we'll be okay.
He handled that so professionally.
Yes.
I have seen coaches dissect reporters for much, much less.
Good for him. Good for him.
Yep.
Jim Schwartz would have handled that very differently. Mike Tomlin would have handled that very differently. Good for Bowles for letting her off the hook. So it comes to understand, I did a little digging on this. The television station that she's working for doesn't have a sports department anymore. She is not a sports reporter. She's a general news reporter. So she might not have known that Detroit has a dome, even though Ford Field's been there since 1999. I'm proud of Todd Bowles for handling it the way he did. Good for him.
I've seen Bill Belichick take people apart in the 90s for much less than that. So, Jeff Risdon, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Thanks, and go Cavs.
Jeff Risdon, make sure you check him out, draftwire.com. Always really good insight with what's going on, not only around the Browns, but around the entire NFL as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus, straight ahead. Stay with us, Sports4CLE. Be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has a 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back!
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve. Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in. I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Heard this morning on my way home from work that Alex Van Pelt stumped Mitchell and the tight ends coach was let go. I'm curious as to wonder why Alex Pelt was fired. He never even called plays. So what was he doing that wasn't right? I mean, when he did call plays, we won a playoff game. So Stefanski should have fired himself from calling plays. But I don't understand what firing him does. Your thoughts and opinions. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus. Brad, I said this earlier in the show, so it's kind of the huge news of the day. I think it's not about Alex Van Pelt not doing a good job. they need to find a guy with a different set of eyes that can figure out how to maximize Deshaun Watson. There's $46 million a year and $230 million guaranteed riding on that.
That is the entire direction of this franchise the next couple of years, is maximizing that. And frankly, the run game wasn't good enough this year either. I know, of course, you lose Nick Chubb, you lose offensive linemen throughout the year, but you should still, in theory, be able to scheme around that to a degree. You have the Miami Dolphins with an offensive line that's no better than your own, and a 31-year-old Raheem Mostert has 23 touchdowns. Like, they weren't good enough on the ground either. But yeah, I think a fresh set of eyes, a fresh perspective, bring some different people, not people that were in Minnesota with Stefanski, and maybe see if you can get more out of Deshaun Watson. And you and I talked about some of the maybe challenges or drawbacks of this pairing. I think getting someone who has a different approach, different perspective could go a very long way.
And Kevin Stefanski has not ruled out the possibility, even in the past. If it makes sense for somebody else to call plays, he will do that. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but it's not off of the table by any stretch. Who are some guys that you think would make sense as offensive coordinators? Now the Browns are in the market for one.
Yeah, I think one name jumps to the top of the list, and I promise it has nothing to do with the fact that he did actually stop at PFF and work for us for a couple of years, but that is Zach Robinson, who is the pass game coordinator for the LA Rams. He's a guy who played in the NFL, what was a 7th-round pick, I think, of the Patriots back in the day, so he's not the OC in LA. So you already have Sean McVay calling plays. You then have Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's brother, serving as the offensive coordinator. The pass game coordinator is Zach Robinson, and he's also been a QB's coach. And so you look at, obviously transitioning from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford is one thing, but they've had to get a lot of play out of John Wolford. They had to get Baker Mayfield brought in last year, and they had that miraculous win against the Raiders or Broncos, whoever that was, where Baker put up a great performance. But the pass game this year in particular, I think, was really fascinating, where you transition from this kind of under-center, play-action-based approach to heavy shotgun, a different approach to how they threw the football this year, and they were remarkable. Matthew Stafford had a career year, maybe not stats-wise, but he played really, really well in the offense, which not many expected to be good at all because of all the losses of personnel and talent and injuries, was great. And I think Zach Robinson played a huge role in that regard, and it would still be a promotion from, pass game coordinator up to OC.
Here's a look at another name that kind of everybody's throwing out there. It's kind of interesting. So this Daryl Ryder, who's a local beat reporter, throws out a couple of names. Tim Kelly, Titans offensive coordinator, also was the quarterback coach with Deshaun Watson back when he was a younger quarterback. Carl Smith, Seahawks associate head coach, and I think you could probably throw Shane Waldron in there as well, another guy that was offensive coordinator with the Seahawks under Pete Carroll. Do any of those kind of strike a fancy? Do you think those are guys that they're probably looking at as well?
Yeah, I think Tim Kelly's connection with obviously with Deshaun Watson in Houston, he was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, so called plays for Deshaun Watson in 2019. I'm sure they have a level of comfort. I think he does tap into, you're still probably looking at, shot plays out off of play action, some of those things that they're doing, under the Stefanski umbrella, but also, worked for the guy where it was a little bit more in the shotgun, manufacturing some of his explosives, using his, maneuverability and getting better at plays once they break down and collapse, and how you can teach the scramble drill and all of those things. So, yeah, I'm sure he'd be interested in reuniting with Tim Kelly. And then Waldron, I don't foresee going somewhere where he can't call plays. He ran the offense in Seattle and frankly did well the last couple of years with Geno Smith and Russell Wilson. For him, I think it would be like a New Orleans or Chicago or somewhere where he is running the offense, not underneath the Kevin Stefanski umbrella.
All right. You mentioned this and alluded to the run game. Take a look. The numbers back up exactly what you were saying. Total yards per carry for the offense, 3.9. Lowest average since 2014. Rushing edge. So those tight ends, remember they replaced tight ends coach, 3.5. Rest of the O-line was 4.05, and that's when the offensive line was kind of shuffling through multiple injuries as well. So the numbers, those are the kind of numbers that you were alluding to. They just didn't get it done running the football often enough.
Yeah, they really didn't. And of course, losing Nick Chubb is not easy for anybody. But obviously, this is a league now where you have to at least have an above-average run game if you have a good offensive line and a good scheme, and then capable backs. And Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford are capable backs, and the rest, in theory, was there. So it isn't just about untapping the passing game. And sure, some of those statistics undoubtedly are impacted by when they were playing a P.J. Walker or a Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Was the threat of the pass, or the deep pass in particular, taken away? And therefore you were facing heavier box counts and, single high safety looks and just challenging you and making it harder to run? Yes, no question about it. But still, this isn't just fixing Deshaun Watson. The entire offense, I think, needs a bit of an overhaul, a new look. And I think, honestly, Stefanski deserves credit for, these are guys he's been with for a while. Start fresh, do a search, maybe bring in someone who views things differently than you, and find a nice equilibrium for all involved.
So take a look at this. This is kind of grouping NFL running backs in clusters. So these are inefficient running backs, guys that didn't get a lot done yards per carry. And you see Kareem Hunt is there. Cook, Pierce, Williams, Joe Mixon. Mixon went over 1,000 yards, but had a bunch of carries. Kareem Hunt was a really effective short yardage guy. And then here's another one, and this is high negative run percentage. And Jerome Ford, I believe it was something in the neighborhood of 16% of his runs got negative yardage. So when we look at those things, keeping in mind the severity of Nick Chubb's injury, what are some of the areas that you look at this Browns roster and say, boy, they need to upgrade?
Yeah, so this is also the challenge when you lose the tackles, when you run an outside zone scheme and you're trying to run off tackle, because Njoku had a good year. Harrison Bryant is a good blocking tight end, maybe not as good as they would hope coming into the second and third and fourth year of his rookie deal, but still a capable player there. But I think that's where you see the loss of those guys. And I like DeJuan Jones, and he did move some people on tape at Ohio State, but I think the negative run, the high stuff rate, which you pointed out there is key, is that you're trying to get to the corner, get to the edge, and then cut up field, but there are guys in the backfield, and so there's that really high percentage of those loss of one or gain of zero runs. Sure, maybe more explosives and more positives as well, which I think was Ford's case in particular. But yeah, you're going to also have a lot of those negatives, and that's tough to overcome. Like, if you ask some coaches, would you rather have every carry goes for 5 yards, or you get a bunch of 2-yarders and then some 20-yarders? It wouldn't be an easy answer, I think, for each coach individually.
When you look at this roster, what areas do you think get upgraded? What are the most pressing needs to improve?
And now I think tackle becomes interesting, because I wonder how confident you are in Jack Conklin going forward. I think you do feel very, very good about DeJuan Jones. But then, Jedrick Wills not only didn't look great again, I think he has been maybe a little bit, he's not as bad as maybe some Browns contingents think. I think that's more tied to his draft status. But when you keep missing time and because of injury and you're not playing great, I'm not saying he's been great, maybe you need to look there and improve there. So, the tackle spots become very, very interesting. I think you also did see in that Houston Texans football game, you and I have talked about it, this is not a team that's going to be predicated on spending at linebacker. Andrew Berry comes from this tree where they don't do that, but you come in with an injured Anthony Walker. He doesn't really play a whole lot this year. Sione Takitaki and Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa can't really cover all that well. They're better playing forward. And Jock had a bunch of awesome, splash plays coming forward in that Texans game. But they got carved up over the middle of the field. And the Dalton Schultz touchdown is a breakdown over the middle. Just kind of using the defense's leverage against them and taking advantage of those second-level defenders that weren't kind of disciplined with their eyes. Like, that is what the Shanahan tree offense is trying to do. So, up the middle, and then, you and I talk about the defensive line, I think, every single time I come on the show, but it remains a need. The interior of that D-line, besides Dalvin Tomlinson, you still need reinforcements there.
Yep, and that's an important thing for Jim Schwartz's defense. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about guys that could be cap casualties. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Mike Florio talking about which wild card loser's quarterback has the most uncertain future. This from NBC Sports Pro Football Talk.
How about Cleveland? I don't know which quarterback to name. Who are we talking about? Who are we talking about? Are we talking about Joe Flacco? Are we talking about Dorian Thompson-Robinson? Are we talking about Deshaun Watson? And obviously Watson, QB1 by virtue of his contract. I feel like what the Browns did without him this year puts more pressure on him and everyone else for next year. There are various reports out there about changes to the offensive coaching staff. They've got to get this figured out. This is the year where it's up or out for the people around Deshaun Watson. And it could be that Kevin Stefanski goes from potential coach of the year to potential hot seat in 1 year because they're still invested in Watson for 3 more years. They owe him. They don't have to play him, but they have to pay him. This is the year that they have to get a return. This is the year that it has to happen. And if he's healthy and it doesn't work, he's not going to be the one who's blamed because they still got 2 more years after that. It's going to be everyone around him. So the pressure is on everyone, starting with Watson, to ultimately prove that he's worthy of the contract he's gotten. But you know what? It's the thing about getting a fully guaranteed contract. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You're still going to get it. Once they sign it, you're getting every penny, whether you play well, whether you don't.
Brad, when you look at it, the coaching staff moves, and we've said it, they're all in. It's not a matter of it's figure out a way to find someone who can figure out how to make Deshaun Watson the quarterback we believe he is. He's played 770 snaps. That's it in 2 years for Kevin Stefanski.
Honestly, it's more than I would have guessed if you gave me an over/under on the number there. Yeah, and look, I think there is, of course, always pressure in this league. There's pressure on every single coach. I think he is a Coach of the Year candidate and, did a lot of good and adjusted to, like we talked about, a half dozen different quarterbacks. The Joe Flacco experience was a fun one and was a massive departure from the guys that were playing before him. He comes in, they were still running a bunch of play action, boot rollouts, and it was working. And they were attacking downfield. You saw the David Njoku emergence and all these various components that were very, very encouraging. I think you can take it both ways. Is it one, hey, he's feeling the pressure, he's feeling the hot seat, he's kind of, these firings are because he's nervous and rattled. I think you also could take it as he actually feels fairly secure because of how, much he got out of this team, and he wants to go from, okay, we were good enough, we made the playoffs, to, you know what, I thought we could have done more, we could have been better in other areas, and I actually feel confident right now that the building is behind me. I'm going to go out there and chase greatness and try to get even better people in this building. But yeah, at the end of the day, it all predicated around Watson, I think, for 1 more year. I know there'll be 2 fully guaranteed years left. We're going to see Russell Wilson move on with 2 fully guaranteed years left. I don't know how hot his seat will be, but you do need to get more out of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it was the latter. I think it was, we were pretty good. We need to figure out how to use Deshaun Watson better to make our offense more explosive. This is from the Bleacher Report, and it's teams most likely cap casualties ahead of the 2024 season. They start with Nick Chubb, owed $15.8 million. Browns would save $11.8 million against the cap by releasing Chubb. I don't think they're releasing him. They may restructure it. extend him out and try to get that number down. Number 2, Dustin Hopkins, $3 million. Problem is Browns don't have many contracts they can get out of and clear some space. None of Hopkins' $3 million is guaranteed, so they could clear $3 million by parting ways with him. He was another guy that was, when he was healthy, he was a huge part of their success. Jordan Akins, $2.4 million. Don't have many options to outright cut. Akins' top option would clear $2 million in space. He does have a history with Deshaun Watson. Njoku coming on might have made that. When I look at all of those, I think the most likely scenarios, they find a way to get Chubb's number significantly lower. And again, I'm assuming they think Chubb's coming back and will be healthy. I think they try to get him in the $7-8 million range for a couple of years.
You saw so many running backs this past offseason take pay cuts or get outright cut, right? The guys that pushed back on it refused, with the Dalvin Cooks, who did decently well on a one-year, $7 million deal and had to forego guarantees and give up the rest of his money. I guess he is now on the Ravens, so I guess you could argue it worked out. But, the Joe Mixons of the world, where you drop it down to 2 years, 11, I want to say what it was. Aaron Jones took a pay cut again this year. So that is kind of the standard now. Even if you play well and are doing well and the team believes in you, they sign these bigger term deals, and by the end of it, the third or fourth year, say, hey, we can't pay you the 10, 11 that you're due. We can pay you 6, 7. And in the old days, running back maybe say, okay, I'll do better than that on the market. Nowadays, they know that's about the best they're going to do. I also think this offseason in particular has a strong free agent class at the position. So I agree with you. An outright cut, especially with the injury and all that, I don't really see that. Because he would, just file an injury. It'd be a whole thing. I don't get into the weeds there. But, yeah, a pay cut for him and maybe some other players I could foresee.
All right. This from Pro Football Focus. One free agent that each NFL team should pursue in 2024. Browns, they go wide receiver Marquise Brown. Brown, once again held back by injuries 2023, meaning he is set to sign a one-year prove-it deal. Has made some plays downfield throughout his NFL career. 6 receptions, passes thrown, 20-plus yards downfield this past season, resulted in 175 yards and a touchdown. I think they need to upgrade the wide receiver room, be it Marquise Brown or somebody else. I think it's an area that's been disappointing, and if you're going to go Deshaun Watson, you better give him some weapons.
I actually like that shot a lot. I think I know which coworker wrote that, but I hadn't read it yet. But I think that's a very good combination there. I think Marquise Brown is looking at a one-year flyer type deal. They mentioned the injuries, but when he was healthy the last 2 years now in Arizona, he was a target hog. He was getting targeted a ton when healthy, and I think particularly for him, I think people think he's a slot because he's 5'9". He plays out wide, so I think he would fit in this offense. And he's very good at the intermediate levels, like 12 to 18 yards downfield. He's a good run after the catch receiver when he gets the ball in his hands. None of the injuries have been, horrible injuries. Just a lot of, soft tissue stuff. Not great to see, but that to me is a perfect, hey, we're going to buy low on a really talented player, a former first-round pick that has been productive when he does play. That just, things aren't breaking in his favor the last couple of years going into this contract. I love that fit.
Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, continue to talk some free agents. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Ugh, holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got Mary and Bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
The Browns should do this with Joe Flacco. Sign him to a 2-year deal, $20 million. Try to trade Deshaun Watson to the Bears for their second first-round pick, plus a number 4 pick in the 2024 draft and a 5th-round pick in the 2025 draft, and also acquire Fields in that trade. I think the Bears might do it and have the Bears pay at least
30% of what's left on Watson's contract with the Browns, picking up the rest. Also, they need to keep the Watkins kids. Watkins and Tillman can be studs on this team if the ball is equally distributed. All right? Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Brad, there's a lot going on, a lot of moves there. I don't think the Bears would ever do that trade. Justin Fields is going to end up being a starting quarterback somewhere next year. It might not be in Chicago. My fear is he might come into the division for the Steelers.
Wouldn't shock me. You're talking to a Bears fan. I don't know if I brought that up on the show before. On behalf of the Bears contingent, I politely decline, respectfully decline to give the 9th overall pick for a contract that you and I were just talking about how the Browns are going to get out of it. So, it's honestly going to be interesting where Fields ends up, and I think Pittsburgh would be very, very fascinating. You bring a different skill set in. You can pitch it as a quarterback competition, and in theory, say Kenny still has a shot, and then whatever you want to do optically, but you bring in a talent and a guy with tools that vastly exceed anyone else on the roster. And, you know, if Tomlin wants to get really crazy with it, you have a legitimate kind of 2-quarterback system where you have different skill sets, and whoever wins the competition could or doesn't win could have a package and get all zany with it. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me.
All right, so you've done a list of the top 100 free agents that are out there. 2 of the Browns are on that, and I think Browns are probably interested in both of them. 42, you have Zadarius Smith, projecting him 2 years, $24 million, 19 guaranteed, and then checking in at 95. Maurice Hurst, projected 1 year, 1.75. Both those guys were productive. Hurst's season ended a whole lot earlier than Jim Schwartz and the defense would have liked it to. Do you see the Browns being interested in? I would think they probably would like to bring back both of them if they can.
I agree with you there for sure. And to start with Hurst, you know, like his production exceeds that value, but unfortunately, you know, he just can't really stay on the field. That's kind of been his NFL story. He's a great football player, but that has been an issue for him, you know, unfortunately, pretty much the entire time. So I think you could get him back, and I think he should view it as, all right, if I'm going to get this final launch pad to maybe get one decent veteran deal, you know, for my entire NFL career, why not go to a place where I was successful, where I trust Jim Schwartz to give me a lot of great looks, where I'm going to be surrounded by other talent. So I think they should be all over that one. It's, again, like another buy low. Even if you only get 300 snaps, he's worth every single penny of what you give him to get that, and the upside is enormous. Kind of the way they played the Clowney situation on a year-to-year, where, I don't know, he was there 3 years. I think 2 of the years was a great value, 1 of the years was a bad value. It was just kind of like you just took a bet and saw what you got. So for Zadarius, I think some people might look at the sack total and think he wasn't as productive this year as he's been in years past. He was still very, very productive, and I think the regression will come there. We've seen it already. He's a guy who's always going to be way up there in pressures and pass rush win rate. And some years he'll get 15, 16 sacks. Some years he'll get 7, 8. I know this year was probably his lowest in a while, but if I'm them, I think they want him back as well. I comp that to a bunch of, you know, recent veteran, like good edge rushers, inside, outside flex. Robert Ayers was like a 280-pound guy as well. That's the comp I have there for him. I think they should be interested in both. I think they will be interested in both. You don't trade for Zadarius Smith in theory, give him a little raise and whatnot, and not think about, hey, let's keep him around for a couple more years as well.
All right. When you look at the free agent class, you've kind of looked at some of the guys that are out there. They may get franchised. Who are some guys that you think make sense that would help the Browns?
Yeah, so we've talked about it a little bit. You know, I think there are a bunch of linebackers that could make some sense. Even if you wanted to go depth route, like a guy like Oren Burks in San Francisco is interesting as a guy that can come in and play special teams. Is a good run defender, sideline to sideline. He's kind of this year's Azeez Al-Shaair, like the third linebacker in San Fran that gets stuck behind Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, who are 2 of the top 15 linebackers in the entire league, but a really productive player in a rotational capacity when he comes in. And we talked about, like, they don't really want to spend there, but there's added value of special teams, and he is a very good 400-snap-a-year type player, does very, very well in all facets of football. So I think those type of guys would be interesting. And then interior defensive line we talked about. I don't know how big of a splash you make there. Like, you're not stealing Justin Madubuike from the Ravens in my mind, but, you know, there are some lower-level options. I think one that's interesting to me in the division, too, is maybe you steal him away from the Cincinnati Bengals, is DJ Reader got hurt at the end of this year. Kind of a Dalvin Tomlinson type football player, but both of those guys can be moved around, can play 1-tech, can play 3-tech. Maybe you buy low on him and see where he's at. I think he tore his hamstrings. It's a pretty gnarly injury, but a really, really, really good football player. I would look there. And then we talked about, I think receiver is still a need. I think Marquise Brown makes a ton of sense. A buy low for me that I would love is going to be a Darnell Mooney in Chicago. Guy that, again, can win at the intermediate level, can separate very, very well, can play on the inside and the outside. I think Deshaun Watson would love playing with a guy like Darnell Mooney.
Brad Spielberger, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
Thank you, guys.
Brad Spielberger, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Free agency, draft, NFL, Brown stuff as well. Pro Football Focus. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.